Prisoners of Geography and the Power of Geography by Tim Marshall. The Prisoners of Geography was first. 10 maps that tell you everything you need to know about global politics, and then comes 10 maps that reveal the future of our world. I've really only read part of this one. I read the Australia chapter and haven't read the rest. So I'm going to leave that once I just sort of show you what it kind of looks like. Power of Geography. And here are the table of contents. Sort of, I know that it discusses a lot of the history of these countries, geopolitical history, and then where they are now, and a little bit about, and then what you can expect from the future. But again, as I haven't read very much of it, I'm not going to talk very much about it. I bought it on the strength of Prisoners of Geography, which I read and really liked and found very, very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about that. Again, we can look at the 10 maps that we're talking about. And the idea here is, if I can say it in a nutshell, is that these countries, these regions, the countries within these regions, make a lot of their decisions, they must make some of their decisions based on their geography. And as long as the geography doesn't change, then we shouldn't expect the decisions to change. We shouldn't expect their actions to change or their fears to change. And this goes back however long that there's been a country or a region with that geography. I'll just give you an example here. We could talk about, well, Russia's first, then we can talk about China. Those are the two top. So Russia has, if we get past the introduction, has an area that is a little bit open, a little bit vulnerable once we get past, when we come over here to, say, this area here. So on this side, there are mountains. They're not vulnerable. On this side, these are very, traditionally have been very friendly neighbors and neighbors that they can control, Kazakhstan, and people would have to come up through here. Not to mention, I should say, not only is this Ural Mountains, but this is just a lot for any invader to try to get through. This up here is icy waters that are frozen in winter. But anyway, what we have that they worry about is this area right here, which is there. We have between these mountains and this sea, we have a plain that makes it very easy for anyone to just stroll into Russia. And what he says is that that explains a lot about why Russia wants to control this region, if not just take it over. Not only did they want to in the past, but they're always going to want to in the future. It's not a matter necessarily of belligerence for the sake of being belligerent or taking land for the sake of taking land, but it's a matter of their personal safety. If they can cut off this little bit here from anyone invading, then they'll be much more protected. They're already protected by certain geographical features, but they're open to this plain here. Another thing that's in the news is talking about Ukraine. This is a warm water port here. That is to say, it doesn't freeze in winter. It's Russia's only chance at a major warm water port. If they don't control it. Ukraine controls it, or rather they lease it from Ukraine. But if they could control it completely, then that gives them access to the rest of the world right here. It's not on this map. It can come through the Bosphorus Strait and come out into the rest of the world. With a warm water port, they don't have to rely on the weather. So that's Russia. Okay, so we can go to China really quickly. I'll just show you one thing about China. That's not the best map. You know, China wants to control Tibet. Well, why does China want to control Tibet? So what he says is that Tibet, right here, is the source of the great rivers in China. That Tibet is the water tower of China. Now, they don't really care if Tibet controls it. I mean, who cares? But the problem is that we have India on the other side. India and China have had their troubles, the two most populous countries in the world. And if India felt like it, if China weren't controlling Tibet, and someday India decided to hop on over the Himalaya, which isn't an easy task at all, but if they did and they controlled it, then we'd have a somewhat belligerent, unfriendly nation controlling massive amounts of water that go into China. And China can't have it. And according to him, China's never going to allow it. The idea of them relinquishing control of Tibet is ridiculous to them. They're never going to do it because of their fear that someone else, especially a belligerent country, could control that water. They don't care about Tibet, but they do care about the water. So anyway, these are, and the book goes on with a million other fascinating, interesting ways to look at what's happening in the world and what has been happening in the world. And this lens lets you, to the extent that it's correct, which I assume that it is, this lens gives you a really different way to appreciate the decisions that other countries are making. So we have here Prisoners of Geography and The Power of Geography, both books by Tim Marshall. This one only came out in 2021. This one's been out a little longer.